We'll convene the Mendocino Council of Governments to order. Can we have a roll call?
Director John Haschek.
Here.
Director Mike Carter.
Here.
Director Greta Connie.
Here.
Director Jeff Hansen.
Here.
Director Josefina Duenes. Tasha Alstrand.
Here.
And Chair Dan Jurdy.
Here in Fort Bragg.
And Director Bernie Norvell is absent today.
Okay, and just for clarification, I'm the only person here at the Fort Bragg location. Item number 2, Assembly Bill 2449. Nafili, can you confirm that there's no action related to that bill?
We have not received any requests for action related to AB 2449.
Okay, thanks. Do we have any issues with the agenda, or can we just approve the agenda as presented?
I'll move approval.
I will second.
Okay, I don't think we have to
Oh.
vote on the agenda. I was just confirming there was no concerns with the agenda as presented. Okay, item number 3 is discussion, direction, and possible action to approve the engagement of consultant for procurement of comprehensive staffing to start fiscal year 24-25.
Yes. So as I think all the board members are aware, MCOG staffing is provided through contract services. The existing contracts, the existing contract period will end, the last day will be September 30th of 2024, so next year. At our last executive committee meeting in July, the executive committee discussed options for continued staffing beyond the end of the current contract period. One option that was discussed by the executive committee was contracting with RAPS, which is the Regional Analysis and Planning Services. They are the nonprofit arm of the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. The contract with them would be for the purposes of developing the request for proposals and conducting procurement services for these staffing contracts. Those development of the RFP and the procurement is not something that current staff is able to participate in as prospective contractors. That would create a conflict of interest. So in the past, at the past time of the last development of the last RFP, County of Mendocino staff went through producing the RFP and conducting procurement. However, there was interest expressed by the executive committee in contracting with RAPS for these services because it is fairly demanding of local agency staff time, and this is something, this type of work, working with other regional governments for staffing services and recruitment is the type of thing that RAPS specializes in. So although we didn't have an official proposal for the executive committee to make a recommendation on at that time, an official formal recommendation on at that time, they did recommend taking a proposal to the full board for action. There was interest expressed in that option, and so they recommended taking a proposal to the full board. So that is what is on your agenda today. You will see that the staff report is a little different than the regular staff report because there is no recommendation. As staff writing the report, anything to do with procurement of staffing services, we do not make a recommendation. We've just provided the information, and then the board can determine what action is best to take. So included in the, well, I think it was sent separately to you, you have the proposal from them, which gives a timeline and price for their services. And I also do want to introduce Maratumi and Diane Idem, who are on the call today. And so they are RAPs. And they can maybe give you a little more information and introduce themselves and provide some background. So I will go ahead and hand it off to them to give a bit more information. And then we can turn it over to the board for discussion and potential action. Oh, Mara, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
You muted it. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, Board of Directors. I'm Mara Toomey, and I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. And we operate Regional Analysis and Planning Services as our nonprofit arm. RAP specializes in providing other services to other governments, such as procurement, administrative services. We've done recruitments and a variety of other services that particularly small agencies have difficulty staffing. Diane Idem is our consultant. She and I both have many years of experience in government with both at the state level and the local level. And we've done a number of recruitments and procurements for other agencies over the last 10 years as part of RAPS. And we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, this is not a question, but just since I was on the board the last time we put this out to bid using county staff, I'll just clarify what I said at the executive committee meeting. Supervisor Hashak is also present and was at the executive committee meeting, but it took a decent amount of county staff time last time, both between HR and our county counsel's office, and both of those offices are really kind of overcommitted right now, so they're just not available to do this. And so I'm looking forward to some other entity taking on this task. And I know there's only a small number of regional transportation planning agencies that have contracts for service rather than direct employees. Have you performed this service for, I think there's one in Southern California, for the other agency that besides Mendo and Lake?
No, we have not performed this specific type of procurement. It is a very specific, but we've performed a number of procurements over our years at both the state and local level, and are very familiar with appropriate governmental procurement procedures. And we understand the intricacies of this one, given that you're hiring an entire firm to provide those services and the conflict of interest issues that we need to be mindful of as we go through the procurement.
Okay, thanks. Director Hashak, do you have any additional comments from the executive committee?
Well, my question is about the first option of the $2,200 for developing the RFP, and then the second option, the $6,600. So, and I'm not able to access that document that might lay out what is actually entailed in the conducting the full procurement.
Yes, so Loretta is bringing you a copy so you can see.
Great.
And I will admit that I made an error in my staff report. There is an error. I had a misunderstanding of the cost proposal when I wrote that staff report. Since that time, we received the written cost estimate or fixed price proposal. So you can see it is actually lower than what I had provided in my staff report. So it is $3,800, including travel costs for the RFP development and procurement services.
Okay, well, thank you. That takes away a lot of my question then, but it's certainly $3,800 is a lot better than $6,600. But if you could kind of lay out after the RFP goes out and what happens then? You interview any bidders?
So after the RFP goes out and the appropriate advertisement time, we would review the proposals that are received to ensure that they meet the requirements. Based on that, we would meet with either the executive committee, the full board, or a separate committee, however you so choose to do it, to evaluate those. We would develop evaluation criteria with the board or special committee, and then we would help them evaluate the proposers, at which point we would do the additional work of notifying the successful and unsuccessful proposers, and we would do the documents to bring the action to the board to award. We would also negotiate with the firm if there's any points within the contracting process that require negotiation.
Okay, thank you. I mean, from my point of view, certainly the 3,800 to get us all the way through seems like a good approach because we don't have very many other options.
Are there any questions for members of the board in the boardroom?
Not at this time.
Okay. Do we have any online comments?
Not at this time.
All right. Would a board member like to make a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to authorize the chair to work with RAPS to finalize a contract for the $3,800, which is the second option, and to have the executive committee be involved in this process.
I will second that motion.
Okay, can we have roll call?
Director John Haschek,
Yes.
Director Mike Carter,
Yes.
Director Greta Connie,
Yes.
Director Jeff Hansen,
Yes.
Director Josefina Duenas, Tasha Osran,
Yes.
and Chair Dan Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, well, that takes us to, we're going to convene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, immediately recess and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. We have the consent calendar, the approval of the August 14th minutes. We have adoption of resolution approving fiscal year 23-24 project list for California State of Good Repair Program, the Technical Advisory Committee recommendations of September 27th, and the adoption of the 2017 initial study mitigated negative declaration for the Covelo State Route 162 multipurpose. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I will move to approve the consent calendar.
Before we continue, we do have just a couple minor corrections on items on the consent calendar.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, good afternoon, directors. I have one typo, a name correction in the minutes. I wanted to let you know that I'll fix that. That's under the minutes, which is under item number 10 in the minutes. Our public health officers, Dr. Coren, C-O-R-E-N, not Cohen, and I will fix that. So the minutes will be as amended. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On the top line on page 2 of the addendum, it references MCOG's old administrative offices at 367 South Main Street, and it should be 367 North State Street. It should be 525 South Main Street, and so that's already been changed on the document that will be available at our office.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent calendar. Do we have any comments on the consent calendar?
The addendum.
Item 9.
Was there a second on the motion? I'll second.
Do we have any public comments on the consent calendar?
I do see a hand up from a member of the public in the Zoom.
Okay, Dave?
Thank you, Board Member Jurdy. Just a brief comment on item 12 in the minutes for August 14th. I apologize, I missed the meeting. I just wanted to encourage the board to maintain its commitment to the Wallala Downtown Streetscape project and the hard-won funding and implementation partnerships with Caltrans District 1 and the California Transportation Commission. I'm a little confused. I'm not begging for a response here, but I'm a little confused by Board Member Jurdy's suggestion to defer direction on the RTIP reservation for the Wallala project. I hope that the rationale for the delay is to allow consideration of other proposals in addition to the full $2 million reservation for the Wallala project. Thank you for allowing me to comment.
Well, we do have a motion to approve the consent calendar. Can we have a roll call?
Yes. Director John Hashek,
Yes.
Director Mike Carter,
Yes.
Director Greta Connie,
Yes.
Director Jeff Hansen,
Yes.
Director Josefina Duenas, Tasha Ostran,
Yes.
and Chair Dan Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to public expression on items not on today's agenda. Do we have any members of the public who would like to address the board on items that are not on today's agenda? Dave?
Thank you, Chair Jurdy. Just a brief compliment to Mendocino County DOT for recent work on the South Coast roads, including some pothole filling and drainage clearing on Old Stage Road and Pacific Woods Road in Wallala. Thank you very much for that. And just also wanted to mention that the Philo Greenwood Road chip seal is a really great job, really well done. So thanks, you guys.
All right. Do we have any other public comment? It looks like that takes us to,
Sorry, go ahead.
go
Nothing
ahead.
here in the board chambers.
all right, that looks like it takes us to our public hearing, item number 11, which is adoption of resolution approving the Federal Transit Administration 5310 grant program.
Good afternoon. The 5310 program provides funding to public and private nonprofit agencies for the purpose of providing transportation services to the elderly and the disabled. There are two categories that are funded. One is traditional and the other is expanded. Traditional provides equipment, so vehicles, radios, etc. And expanded provides operational funding. And so as part of the process, the RTPA must review and score and then submit those scores to Caltrans for traditional projects. And Caltrans will score the operational ones themselves. And so this year, we only had one traditional application, and that was from the Willett Senior Center. And they applied for replacement vehicles for their minivan and their small bus. And so I went through using the scoring criteria from Caltrans and scored each one individually, and they both scored a 77 out of 100. And at this point, are there any questions before we open up the public hearing?
I'll just also add that the scoring for these projects is based entirely on quantitative information or documentation that's been provided in the application. So it is not questions that are really up. There's not a lot of flexibility in scoring provided by the program.
All right, with that, it's probably appropriate to open the public hearing at 1:49.
There's nobody from the public in the board chambers.
Okay, do we have anyone online?
Nobody online.
Okay, well, I guess with that, we'll close the public hearing at 1:50. Would someone like to make a motion?
Well, if I could just ask a question before. So with both of these scoring, with the same score of 77, and it looks like it's a low score, does it mean that there will be funding for one of them or not the other, or neither of them, or how does it actually look when it?
That's going to depend on how much funding is available and what other applications there are. I think the last cycle, some projects down to 77 scored, I think. High 70s, maybe 78, somewhere in there. So it really just depends on what people apply for.
In the big picture of
Yeah.
competition outside of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so all we're looking for is
Yeah, just the resolution approving the project list and the scores.
yeah. So
That were-
moved.
I will,
I'll second.
Okay, great. Can we have roll call?
Director John Haschek,
Yes.
Director Mike Carter,
yes.
Director Greta Connie,
Yes.
Director Jeff Hansen,
Yes.
Director Josefina Duenas,
Yes.
Tasha Alstrand,
Yes.
and Chair Dan Dirty.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I just wanted to add one more comment about that last item. So the score of 77, it is on the lower side, but I want to point out that is not reflective of the service that's being provided by the Willett Senior Center. All of our senior centers that provide transportation are providing very valuable service. Unfortunately, because of that quantitative data that's used in the scoring that I mentioned, all rural services tend to score lower because they're providing fewer rides. That's just the nature of a rural service. So they are doing a great job, and this score is not reflective of the service that they're providing, not of the quality of the service they're providing. So I just wanted to clarify that.
All right, that takes us to item number 12, which is the second amendment to fiscal year 23-24 Regional Transportation Planning Agency budget.
All right, excuse me, that is my item. I'm Janet Orth, Deputy Director and CFO. You have my written staff report here, and this is really a cleanup amendment to the budget. We've been talking a lot about the shortfall from fiscal year 22-23. So we're bringing this to you now for just full transparency and concurrence with the way we're processing these numbers through into the 2023-24 budget. So we'd like to amend the budget. And after we last met on August 14th here with the board, a week or so later, we had the final 12th deposit of revenues for the fiscal year. They come in accrual, there's a couple month lag. So we now know the final amount of revenues for the year, and that was 4.5 million. You have this in my staff report. The budget was 5.1 million, and we have an actual shortfall of $593,588, or 11.6%. So we did have the funds to cover that shortfall due to the Local Transportation Fund Reserve, the LTF Reserve we call that. So that covered all of the fiscal year 22-23 budget allocations, and that made Mendocino Transit Authority whole. They got all of their allocated funds for the year. So, but what this does mean is less money flowing forward into the 23-24 budget. So I'm coming up with an over allocation of $407,632. So not today, but probably next month, MTA is discussing coming back with a revised claim, and that would be a good time to reduce that allocation. So I'm kind of taking this step by step. I wanted to make sure you all knew what the process was and that is clear to everybody. And if you like, I can share the screen with the budget numbers. But just to summarize, I've given you basically two views of how the numbers play out. And I thought it best to use our familiar budget summary spreadsheet that you always see when we bring the budget to you. And that's just our one pager, but it does outline all the steps of how this money flows through. So I've given you what I'm calling a method A and a method B. And the reason for that is that when we first started developing this budget back in February, we had, as usual, an estimate from the county auditor for the New Year's funds, and also an estimate for the current year that we were in, of a year-end, often a surplus. In this case, it was a shortfall. So at that time, staff and the executive committee and the committees looking at this thought, yes, it's probably a good idea not to allocate the full $4.9 million estimate of new funds. There's a shortfall anticipated. It's almost 186,000. So we really ought to be just allocating 4.7 million. So that's why that shows up at the top there of the page. And as it goes down through that column, that LTF column, that's the first column on that budget page. Then you see the calculations for the LTF reserve. So there are a couple of ways we could look at this, and I've just shown you two ways. In this scenario, we've already subtracted out the estimated shortfall, and now we need to cover the rest of it from the reserve. And it leaves basically, 752,000 in reserve when the budget calls for 735. So that leaves a little more money going forward into the budget, except that you really don't have that. In both these scenarios, it comes out the same. You're over allocating by 407,000. That's that bottom number and highlighted in orange there. And if you go to the second sheet that I provided, method B, it's going to have the same result, and I'll just show you the way I prefer to do it. And that indicates at the top of the page, the highlight showing the estimated shortfall, and then reversing that estimated shortfall. So going back to that $4.9 million number in new funds. And this is normally the way we do it. We get that estimate, which is most often a surplus, and we reverse it out so that we're not dealing with that number in the budget. Usually, all the money flows through the reserve process. So moving down the page, you come to the next highlight there, and that shows the full shortfall coming out of reserve. And that really is in accordance with the LTF reserve policy, which we just amended last August. And so what we would do is cover the entire shortfall out of that. It's going to restore our local transportation funds main account that had given an advance payment to MTA way back a year ago in August 22 for their first month, and the second or the 12th payment came out of reserve. But no, we do need to restore that fund, so we come to the next highlight to replenish the reserve, assuming the board still wants to keep that same amount in reserve for this coming year, $735,000. And so that is 15% of the new funds, and that's what was agreed to before. I think it's a wise decision to keep that keep the reserve fully funded. So we do need to put some money back into the reserve if we do it like this. And we will post all the transfers for a full audit trail. And you will notice there's the same result either way we calculate this. So total revenues on both calculations comes to $4,885,352. What does change is the balance available for transit. So that means we are, whereas, I don't have it in front of me without pulling out the adopted budget, but we did have 4.353 million for transit. Now we only have 3,945,000 for transit, so that's reflective of that over allocation of 407,000 you see at the bottom of the page. Now, I hope you're still with me. I know that's a lot of numbers, and if you'd like me to pull it up on screen, I can do that. But in any case, we wanted to make this clear so that when MTA does come back with a revised claim, they know how much they have available actually to claim, which is only 3.9 million, not 4.3 million. So we knew this was coming. I pretty much saw it coming several months ago when we saw the shortfall accumulating. We did have excess funds flowing forward from the last audited year. That was 21-22. We had a healthy surplus. We had 384,000 at surplus, and that's what's moving forward. But in the end, it's had to cover the shortfall. It's not flowing all the way forward and available in 23-24. So that's where we are. I wanted to show you how we came up with this. This is the result of the fiscal year. It'll still be audited, and we'll still come back and show you the entire process at the end of the line here. But we thought it was important to do this step right now and reconcile the shortfall with the new budget. So that's an amendment we'd like to make. Are there any questions? I know it's kind of a rapid fire. Yes, Director Connie.
Thank you. So last month, Willet's Councilwoman Sabrina Rodriguez, who's the chair of MTA, expressed great concern over that shortfall. They were scrambling to come up with that 600,000. But it looks like that's been made right. You've made them whole for the 22-23 year using the reserve funds.
Yes.
So just to clarify, my question is 2023 is fine, but MTA will have less to draw on, less than anticipated for the 23-24.
That's correct.
So now it's in their court to do some cutting, and they'll bring it back to MCOG. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
We'll want to see a revised claim, as I've mentioned in the staff report. If we did not get a revised claim, we would have to do some cutting. We'd rather they do the cutting they would like to do. So if we had to do it on our end, it would probably just be done proportionately, pro rata, down, the line items. But I think they'd rather do their own revised claim, and perhaps MTA management here might want to comment on that. But we'll bring this back next month, and you're correct. It's impacting the new fiscal year, and they will be short by about $400,000. So from what they thought they would get some months ago when we had estimates.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes.
Would MTA General Manager Jacob King like to speak up?
Absolutely. Thank you, Janet. We will be submitting a revised claim at the November meeting. We are anticipating tightening our belts. We've known this was coming since July, so we've been anticipating that number. It's good to see that number now. We hadn't seen that number before, so I think this month we need to work with the MCOG staff and come up with a revised claim to bring to this board.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. Are there any questions for Jacob or for MCOG staff? Are there any public comments on this item? Not hearing any. Perhaps there'd be an opportunity for someone to make a motion.
So
I'll
you
move
see
that
my
we approve
recommended.
staff.
Okay, I'm sorry, I stepped on your line there. You've got my recommendation in the staff report there.
I will move that we approve the staff's reconciliation of the LTF funds, allocation of 2023-24 using method B to cover the fiscal year 22-23.
I will second it.
Right, thank you.
Can I make
we
a
have
quick
roll?
comment?
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I do appreciate sticking with the 15% reserve. I think that's prudent and appreciate the recommendation.
Roll call. Director John Haschek,
Yes.
Director Mike Carter,
Yes.
Director Greta Connie,
Yes.
Director Jeff Hansen,
Yes.
Director Josefina Duenas,
Yes.
Tasha Alstrand,
Yes.
and Chair Dan Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that takes us to, we'll have a recess of the Policy Advisory Committee and reconvenes the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. Is there a motion to ratify the action of the committee?
So moved.
Second?
Director John Haschek,
Yes.
Director Mike Carter,
Yes.
Director Greta Connie,
Yes.
Director Jeff Hansen,
Yes.
Director Josefina Duenas,
Yeah.
and Chair Dan Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to informational reports. Do we have any updates from Caltrans?
Hi, yeah, a couple of reports or updates. For grants, just wanted to say congratulations to both MCOG and City of Ukiah. MCOG for their Noyo Harbor Multimodal Circulation Study and the City of Ukiah's School Street Multimodal Transportation Study. So we're looking forward to working with both of those agencies on that work. There'll be a call for applications for the fiscal year 24-25 Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Cycle on October 5th. So this Thursday. And we'll have a district workshop on October 26th at 1:30. There will be $53.4 million available for Sustainable Communities Competitive, Climate Adaptation, and Strategic Partnership Planning grants. And we'll be sharing the flyer for the workshop and the flyer for open office hours to help with application development coming soon. And we're definitely available to help coordinate on potential projects. Regarding Clean California, the local grant program awards will be announced any day, probably this week. The dump days, we have the Boneville Tire and Mattress event on August 19th and the Willits Large Item Dump Day on August 6th. They were a huge success. Next up, we're having the Ukiah Dump Day, and vouchers will be available in early November for free dumps. Vouchers will be distributed at the Pumpkin Festival on October 14th and 15th during the festival hours at a hands-on educational booth. And then the Laytonville Dump Days, vouchers will be distributed on December 15th from noon to 5 at the Harwood Hall. And first come, first served until they're gone, and they usually do go quick. Good for one free load to the solid waste of Willits during dates in January. And we're also planning for dump days in Middletown and Casper. And of course, if there are other places or needs, definitely reach out and let us know. We're also hiring more staff to help with litter and graffiti, entry-level jobs aimed at people with barriers to employment. And the Covelo Clean California Beautification Project will start this year. It's running slower than we had anticipated, but it will begin this year. And last, Pudding Creek Bridge project in Fort Bragg is expected to be completed by the end of this month. And that's all I have today, unless there's any questions.
Thanks, Natasha.
Just a comment is I think that the Laytonville free dump day distribution of vouchers date has been changed. And I think they're looking at December 18th and to distribute them with the food handout program.
Thank you. This information came from Julia about 2 hours ago, but it very well could be so. So I will check and make sure that we have the most current information coming to you.
I think Brenda had the most recent.
Okay,
That's what I
could
heard.
be so.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, well, that takes us, do we have an update from Mendocino Transit Authority?
Just letting you guys know, we're working with PG&E on doing the charger installation, which we're still holding off on that because of the supply chain. But other than that, everything seems to be going smoothly. Getting ready to tighten our belts.
Thanks, Jacob. All right, Great Redwood Trail.
Yeah, we had a meeting in August to review some of the applications for the executive director position. None of those panned out, and so there's another round that's happening on October 9th is our next meeting. I guess we have quite a few applications. I just talked to Carol Hart yesterday, who's the chair, and she said it looks very promising, so we're holding our fingers crossed.
All right, well, thanks. That takes us to MCOG administrative reports, including summary meetings.
Nothing to add on the summary of meetings, but happy to answer any questions. Not hearing any, we can move on to an update on the Covelo SR 162 corridor multi-use trail project. So construction is moving right along on that project. Over the next couple of weeks, there will be paving, fence installation, culvert work going on throughout the majority of the trail. There are two locations where work has stalled. That includes the bridge or it hasn't stalled, but it is on hold for a couple different reasons. So that includes the bridge location, the large prefab pedestrian bridge that'll be installed over Mill Creek, as well as an area of late inadvertent archaeological discovery on the project. So we did have to pause work there while we follow the procedures along with the Caltrans archaeologists that are there on site and tribal monitors for data recovery in accordance with the state's and Rand Valley Indian Tribes guidelines for those procedures. So that's what's happening currently. I know that Supervisor or Director Haschak had asked about whether the trail will be ready to be used by the public this winter. So it will be a 2-year construction project. The bridge site will not be finished this year. However, the majority of the trail will be at least finished to a state that the public will have access to it over the winter. So that's some good news. Bridge won't be done, but the rest of it will be ready to be used. Even if, there's a few tasks left to do, it will be primarily or predominantly complete. That includes the mitigation for the project will be mostly complete this year with some carrying over next year. There was one additional site that may not be ready this year, and that's a small stretch in front of there's the casino on 162, so a small stretch in front of the casino that work will be on hold pending relocation of a utility guy wire. So, but for the most part, the work will be done, and things at this point are moving along fairly well. So that's the update on that project. Any questions? James, do you have anything to add?
No, you did a good job.
Okay. Okay, not seeing any questions. I will move on to an update on the Rural Regional Energy Network, or REN. RREN is what the state is referring to it, how the state is referring to it. So I don't have a lot of new information for that. The group, which is it's a large multi-county REN of non-contiguous counties for the most part. They're still working out administrative roles and procedures before any real work can begin. Also, implementation plans specific to each program are being finalized. So we, at this point, do not anticipate reimbursable work on that program starting until after the first of the year. Just allowing time, first of all, that's when the CPUC, the first year of the CPUC approved budget starts in 2024, and the administrative details that are being worked out with the group will probably continue through the next couple of months. So That's my update on that. Any questions? All right, I'm not hearing any questions, so I'll move on to a report on Senate Bill 125. So Senate Bill 125 is a budget trailer bill that was approved for the 2023 State Budget Act that created a significant amount of money for transit by adding funding to the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program and creating the Zero Emission Transit Capital Program. So these are funds that will be allocated, unlike a lot of other programs, these funds will be allocated directly to Regional Transportation Planning Agency on a population-based formula, and it will be up to the RTPAs to decide how those funds are used and to program and administer those funds and report on those funds. So as I mentioned, it is a significant amount of money, and it is over a 4-year period. So the first year is the 23-24 fiscal year. So this year, the initial allocation is supposed to be made in April of 2024, but for the Mendocino County region, it is $4,848,229. And then year 2, and this, sorry, let me clarify, that I mentioned there are 2 different programs that funding is coming through from this bill. So this is the amount I just mentioned is the first year of the funding from the TIRCP program, which is the much larger of the programs. So from that program, $4,848,229 in year 1, and then $4,859,713 in year 2. From the ZETCP program, that is spread over 4 years, unlike the TIRCP. In the first year, so 23-24 fiscal year, there will be $505,296,000, and then in years 2 through 4, so the following 3 fiscal years, $283,459,000, for a total over those 4 fiscal years of $11,063,615. There is administration funding identified for the RTPA of it's 10% of the funding, so $110,636. So this is a significant amount of funding. There is a significant amount of work associated with that funding. We will be working, MCOG will be working with MTA over the next month to come up with a at least draft proposal for use of the first year of funds. The RTPA has to submit an initial allocation plan, at least for the first year of funding, by December 31st of this year. So the state has taken several months to work out their guidelines and left us with very little time to respond to them. The good news is that we will have opportunities for amendments, and we will have to submit updated allocation packages each year, each fiscal year. So we will be working with MTA to come up with a proposal. We hope to have at least a draft proposal for your review in November, with final approval in December. Because it is a large amount of funding, I wanted the board to have at least 2 meetings to discuss and respond to the proposals before making a final approval. So that would be November and December board meetings. So we will be meeting with MTA soon. So this is funding that is for public agencies providing transit. It can be used for capital as well as operations, and specifically for capital and operations that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase ridership, and reduce, avoid, or mitigate transit service cuts. So we think that that'll cover a lot of different potential projects and services. I mentioned the initial allocation package, so that does, it does include quite a few things. We have to provide an explanation of funding and service actions that are being utilized for, by local transit for not just the SB 125 funding, but all available transit funding. And that is so approaches to mitigate any kind of operational deficits. We have to provide a justification of our local strategy for using the SB 125 funding for capital projects and operating that lead to improved outcomes, mitigate service cuts, fare increases, or layoffs relative to a 2022 service baseline to achieve short-term financial sustainability. And we have to provide an explanation of how funding is distributed among operators and projects. So things are a little easier for us in Mendocino County. We only have one public transit operator, so that does simplify it a little. So we'll just be focused on justifying our distribution across projects. So I mentioned it can be operations or capital projects. It can include funding for project development for the capital projects or the actual completion, construction, or procurement involved in capital. And that capital does involve vehicles as well as transit infrastructure. So quite a wide range of things that this funding can be used for. The RTPA will also be responsible for providing annual reporting that breaks down how we're using the funds, provides information on vehicles, on ZEV infrastructure, charging infrastructure, as well as how the funding is supporting jobs in California. MCOG will have to provide a monthly report of ridership data on our website starting from 2022. Later in this 4-year period, we will also have to develop a long-term financial plan for sustained transit operations. Fortunately, that is not due until April of 2026, so we do have some time to work on completing that. So we'll be very busy with this in the next couple of months, and so will Jacob. so yes. So more on this at our next meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the allocation numbers that you provided are a little different than on this CalCog form. Is that because these are estimates and your numbers are the finalized?
Yes. So actually, just this weekend, over the weekend, they released the final version of the guidelines, which included final estimates. So that's the reason there was a slight difference.
Okay. And then my second question was maybe more rhetorical, but a tightening of the belt for MTA because of the LTF shortfall, but also a loosening because of this windfall? If you can call it
Right.
that.
Part of the reason for this is to, I think, address the fiscal problems that many transit operators across the state are having. They've been big operators, in particular, have been facing really severe budget deficits and facing major service cuts. So the flexibility allowed in this program, like the TIRCP program, is typically, because TIRCP is not a new program, it's an ongoing competitive grant program. This formula portion of it is new, and the ability to use that funding for operations is new and specific to the formula funding. So they are trying to allow some flexibility for transit operators to grow their fleet, address modernization and electrification needs, but at the same time address those pending service cuts that many of them were looking at. So yes, hopefully, although we did have to, the funding available for transit through LTF was reduced because of the lower revenues last fiscal year. Hopefully this, in addition to higher than normal STA funding. So that one revenue source is lower, but between the SB 125 and higher STA funding, we hope that we are confident that MTA will be whole and we'll be able to also make some improvements. So.
So I have a question. The MTA board has been looking at, as has MCOG staff, with locations for a mobility center or transit hub in Ukiah, and I'm curious, would this be a potential funding source for at least part of the cost of a facility like that?
Yes, this definitely is a potential funding source for the transit center, the Ukiah Transit Center that's currently being planned. It could be for project development, for land purchase, or other components of that. And that's something we'll be talking with MTA staff with. But yes, that's definitely a potential use.
And I heard you describe it also as a focus of the state is to electrify the fleet, which of course MTA is working on. And there's also electric e-bikes that can integrate with bus systems so that people don't need to own a car or get off the bus and then move around a city, by e-bike. Could any of these funds be used for an e-bike system in, let's say, Ukiah, Willits, and Fort Bragg?
I'll be honest, I've read through these and I do not know the answer to, I read through the guidelines and I do not know the answer to that question off the top of my head. I know that micro transit is an eligible use for operations. I don't know if micro mobility, which is what the category that would fall under, I don't know if that is an allowed use. I know it would have to be funded through MTA and because that's the intended, the eligible recipients of this funding, or another public agency. It couldn't be, the private operators of those types of things. So I will have to look into that and find if that would be an eligible use.
Thanks.
I have one more question. So my mind goes to those unmet transit needs that we've been talking about for months, and particularly for areas like Brook Trails and Laytonville, where you have people who wouldn't be able to utilize an e-bike, but could use some other small form of transportation. Could this money address maybe some of those issues?
Yes, so that would be the microtransit category, and microtransit is eligible. As long as it's operated by a public, so by MTA. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you, Nafili, for explaining all of that, because I attended the CalCog meeting, and they pretty much dealt with SB 125 for a long time, and it was fast and furious and way over my head. So, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Lots of reading and highlighting involved in all of that. But I have been appreciative of the information that's come out of CalCog, as they were really, before the state itself released any information, they were working to get us information. So their analysis has been very helpful. Any other questions on that report? All right. Stay tuned for more next month. All right, so moving on to miscellaneous. I do not have any miscellaneous administrative reports. Do you have anything? No? All right. So no miscellaneous administrative reports. Our next meeting date is November 6th, and we will definitely need that meeting. And that concludes the administrative reports. Should we proceed with the planning reports?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. Is this microphone on? Thank you. So in your board packet, I've given you a report on the feasibility study for the Ukiah Transit Center. that Director Jurdy's been talking about. Just to update you, as we've reported in the past, this is a project to do a feasibility study and a location analysis for the new transit center in Ukiah. It started last December, and the project scope is to evaluate potential locations that could be used for a new transit center. As we've reported previously, all of the potential sites that were suggested have been reviewed by the consultant, and it had been narrowed down to 3 top locations, which were on Mason Street, south of the existing bus stop, on East Perkins Street, the former Savings Bank, and then on North Orchard Avenue, the location just north of Kohl's. So the consultant team gave a presentation on these 3 top sites to the MTA board at their meeting on August 30th, and explained that the preferred site, the site that was ranked as the preferred site, was the North Orchard Avenue site. The consultant team requested MTA board concurrence on the preferred site so they could proceed with handing off the project to the sub-consultant that's going to create the architectural renderings of the preferred site. So after MTA board discussion at that meeting, there was no consensus reached on a preferred location. So subsequent to that meeting, the MTA board held a special meeting and a site tour where they toured the top 3 sites. And they visited the 3 sites I mentioned, and then they came back to the facility and had board discussion and a vote. The result, the Noyo Harbor Multimodal Circulation Plan grant project. That's a total grant planning project of $215,000, and we were also happy, as Tasha mentioned, that Ukiah's project for a school street multimodal transportation study was awarded, and that's a $258,000 planning project. I just want to mention that this grant program was very competitive. Out of 161 applications statewide, 90 were awarded, so 56% awarded. So we were very pleased to receive two grants in our area. And let's see, the third item under miscellaneous, I think I'll mention that we're continuing to work with MTA on their short-range transit development plan. The consultants have produced a couple of technical memoranda on existing conditions and a summary of stakeholder outreach. The next workshop on that project is planned for December, and I believe it'll be on the coast since the first workshop was inland. And that project is supposed to have a draft plan available in early January. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, if we have no questions, that takes us to director's reports.
Well, I'll just say that, my questions about the multi-purpose trail in Covelo were generated by the MAC up there, which is very interested, and I think it just shows the level of interest that the community has in what's happening, and really excited to see it happening, and certainly they want it finished, but, really, thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Director Hashak. If we have no other board
Can I jump
report.
in?
Oh, go ahead. I can't see.
I just wanted to let the rest of the board know that Willett City Council sent a letter to Caltrans formally saying no thank you to the road diet that had been proposed for South Main Street. Nafili did come and speak at Willett City Council eloquently about the need to stay true to planning efforts. However, at this time, the community of Willits is very strongly divided about going forward with the Main Street plan, and the council opted not to go forward at this time. I also wanted to say something else, and now I forgot what it was. It was regarding the Great Redwood Trail. The Willits Community Development Director did let us know that our portion, the Willits portion of the Great Redwood Trail, is slated for construction to begin next spring. and hopefully community sentiment will stay strong and true on that one. I think that when people start seeing some kind of construction, hopefully they'll be as excited as the folks in Covelo.
Thank you, Natasha, or Greta. Okay, do we have any CalCog update?
Oh. Well, like I said before, that there was a lot of talk about SB 125, and that was pretty much it, along with some legislation reports, some regarding Brown Act, and flexibility for having remote meetings, but that was pretty much the update.
All right, well, thanks. Looks like we can conclude today's meeting at 2:37.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.